Welcome to the Bracket Factory and welcome to the latest thrilling episode in the Ner-a-car saga. Now, if you've been following this series, you'll know that we've got a bit of a mission, and the mission is to get Nat to roll down the lane on the Ner-a-car sort of safely. We've done a lot of work already on the bike, got the wheels back on, sorted out the steering. So 2 more things left to do before we can tick the mission. 1, we need to sort out the brakes. It's got 2 brakes, both on the back wheel. We need to sort those out, and we also need a stand. So let's crack on with that.
Right, so we're back on the Ner-a-car. The bike which some of you love and some of you think is the most ugly thing you've ever seen, but I think you all find it fascinating. Well, I hope so anyway. But what we're going to do now is we're going to focus on the brakes. Now, as a reminder, it has 2 brakes, both rear brakes. So this is the drum on the off side, and this is operated by a handle, a brake lever for the right hand, and the other brake is on the near side, and it's operated by a foot pedal which goes here, which is attached to one of the footrests. Now, this is one of the footrests. It won't come as much of a surprise that it is A, very grotty and rusty, and B, I think is pretty much completely homemade. The old make do amend motto has been used by our friendly engineer again. So the first step is to kind of resurrect these 2 side panels, side footrests. This one is just a plain one, so that's be quite simple. This one has obviously got the lever mechanism attached, so I'm going to whip all that off, clean it all up and inspect it, and we can sort of discuss what we think is original, not original, and then stick it back on the bike. Right, over at the bench with this footrest and brake lever, so let's get it to pieces and take stock. Right, so that explains why this didn't come off. It's because these holes are threaded with these screws, which have got blue paint on the end. More blue paint buried underneath here. So I need to carry on removing this, and then I can get the other screws out. Right, so it's now all in bits, and first impressions are that this lot isn't original Ner-a-car stuff. This is all being custom made. This is not Ner-a-car. The Ner-a-car had an aluminium casting that sat below here. This is a steel casting, a steel machined bush. It's in reasonable condition, but very dirty. And it's spaced off with these sort of fibre spacers, a sort of insulation material. Don't know why it's made out of insulation material, but it is. We've got this clevis pin. I think it's just been peened over in there, so we need to work out what we're going to do about that. These are obviously all countersunk screws which fit into here like this. All blue, notice. Blue again. And this is basically a spring on a little bolt that is your kind of foot lever. So I think I need to do is clean this all up and report back. Right, so we're back at the bench, more elbow grease expended, and we're looking at these parts which have been cleaned up. So I don't think this is original Ner-a-car. I've seen pictures of the parts. There should be an aluminium casting. Instead, I've got this steel part. This arm looks like it's been made. This all looks a bit home brewed. But it's all quite nice, so as you may expect. I'm going to keep it. So nothing really needs to be done for that. I need a new pin through there, but that's it. These spacers are made out of, it's sort of like Bakelite type insulation material. You can clearly see it's been recycled. I don't know whether you can make it out on there, but there's a letter A. What on earth is that from? Something was bigger, had an A on it, and now it's part of this bike. So anyway, we're going to reuse those. These bolts, 1/4 inch BSF, countersunk, blue paint on the top, spring. Now this little clevis pin has basically got this 1/4 inch rod with this, it'll be 3/16 BSF nut, which would peened over, and it slots down inside there, just the right size, and screws in from there. So I'm going to reuse that. I've got some 1/4 inch rod, which I'll turn down and thread, and then at the other end, which is missing, I've actually ordered a 1/4 inch, it'll be U&F, so compromise, a 1/4 inch clevis pin, and I think what I'll do is use this one on the back, and I'll use the new one underneath here because you can't see it. So, oh yeah, and finally the footrests. So this is the footrest. I had to peel this back to get to the top of the screws. You can see it's been painted blue. So what's happened here is that it was painted blue. This thing was glued down, and then later the whole thing, including the rubber mat, was overpainted in black. You can see the black paint on it there. And what I did is I got some hot water and fairy liquid, and I scrubbed this with a plastic brush in the kitchen sink. Don't tell Nat I did that, by the way. And this is, to compare and contrast, this is the one which I've not done yet. But when I do the other one, it scrubs up all right. So happy enough with that. That can go back on. Obviously I'm going to clean that one so it looks like that one. Happy enough. So I think the next step is to screw all this back together, bolt it on the bike, and make a new rod and hook it up to the rear brake. Right, so I've put this side footrest on, and I'm now starting to rig up the brake and see how it's all going to work. And if you remember, the lever arm had the remains of a sort of chopped off sort of arm, rod rather, this rod here. So I've actually turned down and threaded this rod, as it's actually just 3/16 BSF. And I've fitted this rod in here, and this rod now runs all the way to the back. And I kind of machined up this sort of little thing which slots in there like that. It says struggling like that, 1/4 inch. So, but there are three things that I'm not crazy about this. So let's go around the side. And I don't really want to criticise the previous engineer too much, because they've done a very good job. By the way, the previous engineer shall be known henceforth as Leslie, because Leslie could be a man or a woman. I'm thinking Leslie Phillips, who is a British actor who was famous for saying hello. He strikes me as the sort of person who might work on this. But anyway, first things first, I really don't like that 3/16 thread in there. You're going to be putting a lot of force through this brake pedal. I don't want to just if you strip the threads off the end of there, you got no brakes. Secondly, I don't like the angle of this lever. It should really be more sort of at this angle. And if we go around the other side and look at where this rod goes through here, and if I press the pedal down, I'm getting a whopping That's a full scale deflection of the pedal. I'm getting about 1/4 of an inch of movement in this rod, and that's because of the angular lever arm. And thirdly, I don't like this. This is sort of design. I kind of knocked this up, but looking at it, it's not great because you've got this pin that will be in single shear and a bending moment. It's no good. You really want something in double shear, like a clevis pin. But you also want it to be adjustable. So you really want some kind of adjusting nut on here so you can adjust it and tighten it. So I think I've got a bit of re-engineering to do. I think first things first, I'll make a decent bomb-proof rear pull bracket for this that I can use to adjust. And then we'll take a look at the other end and decide what to do.
Right, so now back at the bench some time later, actually quite a long time later because this all took quite a while. But so we've got 3 parts. This first part is the part which actually pulls on the lever arm for the rear brake drum. And of course, well, this is the pin that goes through, and of course now I've got this pin in double shear, which is the best and strongest way. It means this is much stronger and you're not going to have a sort of twisting moment on the rear arm. And just over 1/4 inch wide for the arm. It's got a 1/4 inch hole in the middle, of course. Now this slides on the brake rod like that. And the other part is this adjusting nut, and it's got this this cutout in it here. Take that off there. It's got this cutout in it so that it kind of locks under spring tension, and it won't just start to unwind itself. Now you can also put a lock nut on the outside, but this is an easy way to adjust it, or the easiest way I could think of, given what I'm working with. So let's stop waffling and see if it all works.
Right, so it's now all fitted to the bike. At the moment, I've got no spring on here because there's so much spring force in this arm. When you screw this on, it's actually pretty difficult to actually turn round. So what I can do ultimately, if I choose to, is weld a little shoulder on here and put another spring in there, which means you're not relying on this spring to stop that from turning. But as it stands, it works. I'm quite happy with this design. I think it's pretty bomb proof. This is in double shear. That's not going to strip. Happy with all of that. Does it actually work? Okay, so let's spin the wheel and put the brake on. Yes, it does work. So that's quite good. Happy with that. Not overly happy with this. That's not splined, it's not keyed. And I'm still not happy with this front end bit. Not really happy about the geometry of this arm here. When you press this down, oh, another cat. When you press this down, this lever arm is moving more upwards than it is backwards, which means that your kind of range of motion is very limited.
And I may come back to that. I may re-engineer that, either make a new arm or cut this off and weld it at a different angle, who knows. But for now it works because the brake does work. Certainly for a slow speed test it works. So now I'm going to swing the guns round to the other brake, the other rear brake, which is this lever arm here, which is a cable operated brake. Right now I don't know where the cable goes to, but I'll have a cup of coffee and have a think about it, and we'll get on to that next.
Right, I've had my cup of coffee and I'm now taking stock of the situation, and what we should have here is a brake lever. It's called an inverted brake lever. It's the one that hinges at this end, sort of hinges up like that, but that's missing. And then we should have a cable that runs down, so inside here, out through there, and along there. That cable is missing. And then there should be some kind of bracket that goes under here, which is the cable outer stop. That's missing. And then it should go to some kind of adjuster here, which is missing. And then it goes to some kind of clevis pin here, which is, you've guessed it, missing. So I've got to start making some stuff. I've got some modern clevis pins, but they are too narrow for that. So it looks like I'm making a clevis pin. I do actually have an inverted brake lever, this, which I picked up at the Banbury run. So I can use that. I've got some cable inner and outer. I'm going to have to make the correct size nipple for that, probably out of brass. But I'm also going to need a bracket, and the bracket is going to have to go somewhere around here. I don't know where it went, and I don't want to drill any new holes in the chassis, so I'm probably going to use these holes here. Obviously had something on here, don't know what. But I'm going to use those holes to make a bracket which is going to go sort of there somewhere. So I'm just going to kind of prototype that in cardboard. Right, I've made this little cardboard prototype bracket out of cornflake packets, thanks to neighbour Dave, who supplies these to me. I don't actually eat them myself, and nor does Nat, but he eats lots. So knocked up this bracket, and the way it works is it'll sit just inside this frame, like, wait for it, bear with, caller, that, and then you've got a sort of tab that sticks down underneath just there, and that tab comes down at this angle and the cable will run down there. That's the theory. So I'm going to start making that out of metal and see if it works. Right, initial rough cut made, so let's offer it up. Slots inside the chassis rail like that, and you've got this tab protruding down here at an angle. So I think that's going to work. So now I'm just going to refine it a bit really. I want to put a reinforcing fillet in there because I don't want this to bend down under extreme squeezage. And I might put a fillet in just here as well, just to make it completely bomb-proof. And then we stick it on. I might even give it a lick of paint, who knows.
So here's the finished article, painted black to match the bike, possibly a tad over-engineered. I'm not sure what you think, but I'm sure it's going to work, so I'm quite happy with it, and I don't mind making the old bracket from time to time. This is, after all, the bracket factory, so this is what we should be making. And this hole here, of course, is for this adjuster, which screws in there like that, and that's what the cable outer will go into. And that'll sit inside the chassis quite nicely. Cable will go down to the arm. So that's now done. I need to make some more parts. I'm going to focus on the rear clevis pin and adjuster. Right, so we're back at the bench and I have finished making this little clevis pin. This, unlike the one on the other side, this is actually 5/16. The other one was 1/4, so slightly bigger to work with my custom lever, my special non-original lever. This is threaded 1/4 inch BSF, of course. Need to stick to Whitworth. So of course that will pull, but I need something else to connect the cable to. So I've also made this. So I didn't show me making this because I used all the same techniques as the other ones. And the way this works, it's got a hole in the end, and this bolt has got a hole in it, just here, there, and you thread the cable through and then tighten this up. So I put a couple of washers underneath here, tightened it up and drilled the hole in the bolt through this hole. So then when you remove the washers, it forces the cable into a sort of double shear situation and clamps it tightly. Well, that's the theory anyway. And the whole thing is threaded, so it's giving me a certain amount of adjustment. I can change the length. I can change the length of this threaded bar, and hopefully that should work. And I've also obviously got some adjustment in this bracket as well. So now we have a lever. That's good. We have cable outer. We've got cable inner. We've got a means to stop the cable with this bracket. We've got a cable clamp here. We've got a clevis pin thing there. The only thing we need now is, have you guessed it, we need a nipple on the end of there to engage in the end of, oops, not in there, well, in there, like that. So can you see this? So I am now going to make a nipple to go on there, and when I've done that, we can attempt to rig it all up. Right, this nipple has now been soldered on. Apologies, I forgot to press record when I was soldering this, but I just used normal plumbing solder and flux to do this. I've done this quite a lot often before. It's you know, it's pretty bomb proof. Well, we'll see, won't we? A top tip is to put a slight kink in the cable when you slide this on, so it stays where it is. But that then obviously fits into there like that, quite nicely. So obviously, the longer the whole thing is, the more solder and the more, you know, the stronger it's going to be. So anyway, let's stick it all on the bike.
Right, so the brake is now on. And I've done the ultimate squeeze test, where you basically squeeze the handle as hard as you can to see what breaks or snaps or fails, etc. The cables tend to stretch at first, so damn good squeeze. And this is absolutely bomb proof. This bracket underneath here is even more bomb proof. This cable link is also bomb proof. The weakest link in the whole thing is this. And what's happening, all these black marks, is that I gave it a damn good squeeze and it was rotating on the shaft, because whilst this has a keyway slot in it, there is no keyway in that shaft. It's just pure compression. So anyway, if I spin the wheel, spin, put the brake on, it works. I've tightened this up very tight and it seems to have a nice feel, so it's certainly good enough for a test ride. But at some stage I will machine a keyway into that and make sure that that is not the weakest link. I don't know what will then be the weakest link, but I don't want that to be the weakest link. So what next?
So what next indeed? We're getting very close to the test roll. Nat is drumming her fingers furiously, waiting to do this. But there's one more thing I want to sort out before we do that, and that is a stand. I need a stand for it. There is no stand. Before we were balancing it on bits of wood, which is not really very good solution. So I need to make a stand. So let's go to the bench and talk about a stand.
Right, so back at the bench to talk about the stand. Now, fortunately, I have these pictures, dimension pictures, done by a guy called Ben Gootskens about 15 years ago, 14, 15 years ago, and he went to great trouble to dimension the stand, showing the pictures of the cross-section, the layout of the stand, etc, etc. Now, what I could do is I could reproduce this accurately, which would be quite time consuming. Everything, there's no welding. There's actually pretty much no welding anywhere on the Ner-a-car. It's all pressings and rivets. So I could rivet all this, or I could just weld something up. Given that it's not a sort of upside down again, given that it's not a sort of nut and bolt restoration, I think what I'm going to do is fabricate something which basically works similar to this but not the same. So here's a clue as to the shape of the rear kind of pivot point, and this bit butts up against the frame, so I need to make something like that. This bit I will try and sort of replicate this to some extent, but I'm not going to try and replicate this whole channel section round here. But I will try and get the sort of dimensions of these side box sections similar. It's 1/2 inch by 3/4
box section, rectangular rounded profile. I don't have any of that. I can't get any of that, but I do have 3/4 square. So I'm going to cut some down, I think, and then weld another plate to it to create that sort of box section, which in itself is quite time consuming. And I'm going to make something like that. And to that extent, or whatever, I've made this. So this is a pivot point here, and this is the bit that butts up against the frame rail. I don't know whether it's going to work, but I'm going to make a couple of these, and I'm going to cut down some box section, and I'm going to report back. Right, sometime later, and I've made these, cut this down. That was an absolute pig. I don't know why I decided to do that, but trying to cut accurately with an angle grinder is a real sod, to say the least. I slipped there, look. But I kind of filed it down, and it's pretty good. I also made these in the same way that I've done all the other stuff. So I've cut them out, and what I quite like doing is when I'm doing a fabrication, an accurate one, is where I want to do a bend, I actually put a cut. So I've cut half the depth. So now when I fold it, A, I will know exactly where it's folding, and B, it won't distort these other bits. So it'll be a nice accurate corner, and then I can fill the groove with weld and dress it if I want to. So this bit will fold that way, and this bit will fold that way, and they're handed. So obviously I've cut them on the opposite sides. So I think what I'll do now is I'll fold these up and tack these legs on there, like that, and offer it up to the bike and see if the geometry is starting to look right. I've got a feeling this is going to be a slightly iterative process to make this all work, but let's do that. Right, so it's now tacked up and offered up, and there's a few critical things I need to check. Firstly, this kind of cross connecting bar, this needs to sort of be slightly extended from the mudguard, because I'm going to have some kind of clip here which holds it up. Maybe a spring clip, not quite sure yet, but a clip. I also need to check the kind of splay angle of the stand, and I know I can eyeball it and see it's about the same splay angle as that, which gives me the width across the back, and also I've got the length. But the other thing I need to check is that when it swings round underneath, it doesn't actually foul with the tyre. Because of the geometry of the thing, and this pivot is offset, it gets closer and closer to the tyre the more it goes. And at the moment it's stopped by this bent over flange, but I can see I wasn't sure what angle to make that flange, because of course I've bent this, so I can now see it does need a little bit of trimming, and when I trimmed it, it's probably still going to miss. So I think what I need to do is trim this bit first here, then the whole arm will go further forwards. It needs to go a bit further forwards, and I just need to make sure that that doesn't bash on the tyre. When I've finalised those dimensions, I'm going to cut another bit of tube like that, weld it in across the bottom, and then I'm going to weld in some kind of gussets which go here, some strip gussets which go in there, and then I'm going to offer it all up again. Probably going to tack it still at this stage, and then I've obviously got to, I'm going to box that in, going to trim off the feet, put little pads on the bottom. I might put a little pad on there so to spread the load against the chassis. So quite a lot more fabrication to do, but it's starting to look quite good. Offering it up for a quick test. Looking good. So we'll crack on. And finally, back of the bench, after a lot of welding, here's the stand. So it went pretty much according to plan. 95% of the welding went okay. Quite happy with these welds. As a general rule of thumb, I don't grind welds because A, it's very time consuming, and B, I like to look at the welds. I quite like welds. So this one went all right. You can see that there. Can we see it there? But this one, not this one, where is it? This one here got a bit too hot and blew out just the side of that bracket there, that sort of flange thing. I mean, I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it, but it'd be quite good if I'd run the weld from that direction. And obviously the job gets hotter and hotter and hotter, so you have to back the pedal off. And I didn't, I lost concentration and just blew through. But I think generally, it's fine, it's fine. So, and the feet, I've made the feet probably a little bit bigger than they need to be. And ideally they would be sort of curved at each side as well. I can still do that, of course. I mean, I could put a little score in there, tap it round and weld it up. But I think now, because Nat is absolutely desperate to ride the bike, I'm going to stick it on the bike and see if it works. Right, we've wheeled her outside and we've popped her on the stand, and it all works rather well, it has to be said. Made this little clip here which holds the stand up. It's currently just made out of mild steel. I need to make it out of spring steel, and it just slides up and catches on there, so that works all right. I also need to work out, or to finalise, I might put little castellated nuts on here and pins, but that is all very good. So obviously there's only one thing to do now, isn't there? It is, of course, test ride time. So right on cue, here comes the Bracket Factory Chief Test Pilot, Natalie, reporting for duty. So Nat, what do you think of your amazing steed?
Well, it's absolutely spiffing, isn't it?
It is absolutely spiffing. Now, I'm pretty confident you can handle the power. It's just the steering I'm a little bit concerned about. So, do you feel confident to take her away and give her a run?
Well, we'll give it a go, shall we?
Give it a go now. Excellent. Steady as she goes there. Steady as she goes.
Brakes in good working order.
Excellent. Tick. Right. Off she goes. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. So the reason I know that she can handle the power is because this is her day bike. All 700cc of it, Yamaha of course, but no fun compared to a Ner-a-car obviously. So here we are back at the paddock. So Chief Test Pilot, what do you make of that?
Oh, that was pretty good, I think.
Excellent, very good. And how do you feel about driving it with an engine?
It'll be an interesting experience.
It will indeed. So I think that's what we might be doing next. Thank you very much. So I'd say that was mission accomplished, wouldn't you? But the question is, what's next? Well, what's next is that we need a new mission. And the new mission is, of course, to have this thing driving along under its own steam. But if you want to see any of that, you're going to have to tune in next time. So if you like that, please do hit like. If you want to see what comes up next, don't forget to hit subscribe. Please do leave me a comment. I try to respond to all the comments. And if you want to support the channel, please do consider getting one of these t-shirts available at my shop, just there. But I think for this episode, that's about it. So thanks for watching. It's got brakes.